so we're up for our next two candidates. This is for Sheridan County School District Number 2 Board of Trustees. And we have Shelta Rambur and Nancy Stevens. And there is 15 candidates for these seats.
Wow.
Yes.
Are you incumbents or new?
No, we are not incumbents.
New.
Great question.
I think, are there only 2 incumbents?
There
There are only 2 incumbents out of the 15.
Wow.
So the plan is that we will have 2 at a time, 2 different times each evening on Sunday, so it'll be 4 candidates per Sunday evening.
As long as we're talking about these high-level structural questions, does that mean that there are 2 that chose not to run?
Correct.
And which 2 are they?
Sue and
Wilson.
Shelley.
Okay.
Is Sue the chair?
Yes.
Yes.
And how many positions do we get to fill? 4.
4.
Wow. Okay.
Time to get to work, everybody.
Let me sharpen my pen.
Okay, so same format as always. They'll each introduce themselves, who they are, why they're running, and any piece that they really want to make sure you know about them. About 5-ish minutes each, and then we'll open it up to questions. I know you get 5 whole minutes.
So many things to say.
I can fill it all now because I'm so used to being shrunk down.
And the good news is there's no bell tonight.
If you hold the fly swatter up, I'm coming at you.
So it is great. Okay.
That was great.
And the way that I describe this for anybody that's new is that this is just like if you all came to my house and I invited them over so that we get to visit with each other and get to know who they are. We are not trying to decide who we want them to be. We're not going to try to make them who we want them to be. They're here to let us know who they are. So as always, just keep all of your questions very respectful and very specific to their roles and this position. And then we'll just have open dialogue. When you ask a question, if there's a candidate that you specifically want to answer that, or maybe they've said something that you want to ask them about, make sure you say, Nancy, I want to know this, or Shelta, I'm wondering about that. And the other one will get to also answer, but that will let them know that you're specifically wanting that information from them. And then they'll just pass the mic back and forth. Did I cover everything? Is this still on? Okay. All right, so I'm gonna pray. I do not think this is on.
You turned it off.
I have not touched it.
Oh, well, it's off.
I think it's on.
It was on, but then it's off.
Yeah.
Now it's off? You see it's off? I don't hear anything.
We can hear you.
Okay.
I'm really good at that.
Oh, wait. I can give them the mic that the audience, oh, it's
there
back
it is.
on.
Oh, it's Andy fixed it.
It's closer.
It's still on.
Yeah, it's on.
Okay. If it quits working, we'll give you the other mic. That was new. Okay. So see, just like at home, things don't always work the way they're supposed to work. Okay, so I'll pray. We'll get started. There are some snacks and water in the back if you need it. If you guys need water as you go, just wave and I'll grab you some and bring it up. And the bathrooms are down the hallway on the left. Okay? Lord, we're very grateful for the opportunity and the freedom to be here tonight. Thank you for Nancy and Shelta coming and making this time. They need you. Would you please bring them your Holy Spirit and let them be led by you to speak clearly and to share what needs to be shared and to articulate who they are and why you've got them where they are right now to do what they need to do. Help us all to ask questions that are effective, informative, and relative. And I pray that you would help us all to be equipped in how we need to vote in all of these races this November. And we are really grateful that we have this opportunity where we live, that you've chosen us to be born and live in this nation and in this county and city so that we can participate in it and help us to be good stewards of that. Equip us to do so. It's in Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Okay.
What's your closest? I'll just pass it to you. No preference, I was just handing it closest.
Sure. Okay, hello. Thanks for having me. This is
awesome to get the opportunity to come and speak to all of you. I appreciate it so much. I'm Shelta Rambur, and I am humbly asking for your vote on November 8th. I decided to put my hat in the ring for the fact that I feel that for many years that this school board has been doing their own thing and not representing the people that they are supposed to be representing. I think COVID gave you all a little look into something that I've known for quite some time while I was trying to fight for a principal to stay at Woodland Park. I stood out in the road at the beginning of a school day, which was the same day as the vote to move a principal. So I handed out flyers to bus drivers, to cars going by to save our principal. And the superintendent then called the principal and said, "Shut it down, this is a done deal." And then I found that out and I called a board member and I said, "I thought you were voting on this." And, "Oh yes, we are, we're voting on it tonight." So I go to the meeting, I speak, "Please keep her where she is. This will be the 5th principal my children have been through in elementary school." And they all voted unanimously to move her. So, and that was years ago. So I have been advocating for my kids for a really long time. And when I got asked by the New York Times if I've always been an activist, I said, I'm just a mom advocating for her kids. I'm not an activist. I'm not a politician of any sort. I just want what's right for my kids because I know what's best for them. And that's what I want to bring to the board is the parents are in charge of their children and know what's best for their children. And I want to help parents advocate for that. I think there's a lot of laws that parents don't know that they can enforce in school, like the opt-out form. I just want to bring back the voice of the parents to the board. I want to be a person that teachers can actually come to with problems. I feel like that's another issue in Sheridan is they don't dare speak up. And I want that to change. We need a better culture of our community coming together and doing it for the kids. I don't know if I'm at my 5 minutes, but I feel like I've talked forever.
We really don't know what to do with 5 minutes because at the last 2 things that we've done, we had 90 seconds and then 2 minutes. And Mr. Harry did ding a bell and we were done. So this is a lot of time to fill.
Yeah.
And a fly swatter for the 10
And a
seconds.
fly
15
swatter.
seconds, yeah.
Which I wanted to come and take out of your hand.
Yeah, me too.
My name is Nancy Stevens. Because I have a little bit more time, I just want to give you a snapshot of myself. In the past, I've used the time very clearly to convey what it is that is important to me and the reasons that I'm running, but I also think it's important that you know the people that you're electing. I grew up in Texas. I was a product of half of my life I was homeschooled and half of my life I went into public school. It was a beautiful transition and I feel like I got the best of both worlds. I really, truly do. I attended college, met my husband, we got married. He was in the 82nd Airborne in the Army for 5 years. We lived in North Carolina. We moved back to Texas for a couple years, and then we moved overseas to Haiti as missionaries. From Haiti, we were there for 5 years, and then we moved to Sheridan, and I affectionately refer to Sheridan as the Promised Land. This place is so special, so special. My kids, I have 4 children. We started out attending, they were going to school in Meadowlark, and we loved their teachers. They were incredible. I think Sheridan has some of the best teachers, hands down. And you can see that based off of test scores, which are not the only rubric we should be looking at things, but there are certainly some incredible educators in our classroom. as most parents did when COVID things started happening, I started getting involved, and I would go attend the board meetings, speaking up and saying things like, are we looking at, for example, with masking, are we looking at the effects that this might have on our children? Are we evaluating this? Are we putting measures in place to, without thinking about the future? And I spoke up and I said, I think parents need to have the say in what happens to their children, the medical rights to their children. Now, some people would say that's a terrible idea, you don't need to, don't touch those things, but it was important to me. As the couple years have gone on, I've continued attending the board meetings. And as I sit in the audience as a parent, first of all, I'm surprised that there aren't more parents there. I think it's very important to hear what happens at the board level because they set policy, and policy affects people. And that's why it's so important. So I have been attending board meetings for 2 years. There have been things that have surprised me. For example, they will have a meeting, and just as Shelta talked about, the board will come out, they will vote on something, and in 2 years I cannot recall a time when I heard any vote that went contrary to the majority. It is almost everything is passed unanimously. And if the board is a reflection of the community, how would a community member or taxpayer or parent know that they have any representation when there's no discussion happening prior to these votes? So what I would like to see changed in that aspect is at a board meeting, let's take a vote, and then prior to that, let's talk about our stance. Let's do that openly so the public can know, wow, I really feel like Nancy or Shelta or any of the other board meetings or board members are bringing something that's important to them, that they have representation, because that's the whole point of our board is community representation. That's something that I would love to change just on a practical level. I would say that I'm very much for supporting our teachers. If our teachers leave, we can be in a world of hurt. Nationwide, we're looking at teachers not being satisfied or feeling under-supported, undervalued, and I don't think that we need to, that's not something Sheridan needs to have happen. We need to be supporting our teachers, giving them every opportunity to be the most effective that they can in the classroom. The other thing for me is let's keep agendas out of our schools. We've watched a shift nationwide of things entering the classrooms, whether that's critical race theory, gender theory, things that we need to be very protective of here in Sheridan. It doesn't belong in our education system, in my opinion. I'm also for parent involvement. I think there's an effective and a good way for parents and teachers to work together for the betterment of students. And there's a respectful way for that to be done. I feel like it needs to be an open conversation with one another. If there's an issue that comes home with a student with an assignment, I think our parents or the teachers, as a parent, we should be able to go to the teacher and say, can you explain to me why you did this assignment? Can you help me better understand it? Maybe this goes against our family values. Is there another assignment that you could give? I think there's a way to compromise with that. The next thing for me would be carefully evaluating federal funding. I think a lot of times we look and say, oh, we're being offered this amount of money and it looks really good, but I want to know what are the strings that are attached to that? What are we signing up for? The known and the unknown. The next thing would be, like I touched on, board transparency and communication, discussion, open dialogue, I feel has been lacking the past couple of years. Overall, I'm for setting students up for success in the classroom, no matter if they choose a four-year university, a trade school, whether they enter the workforce after graduating. I want to see Sheridan students succeed. I think that's all I have for you. Did anyone time that? How long was it?
6 minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Without a timer, it's just hard to tell.
That's right.
And you get an error.
We've only had one person where I had to actually say, okay, you're 30 minutes past what we said, so. Yes,
30 minutes?
yes.
I'll tell you later.
Okay, anybody's first question? Was that a hand or a fly?
Fly, sorry.
Okay.
Can
Then I
we just
get
go
to
ahead
go.
and sign them up?
Oh, I got lost.
You go.
Okay, here's my first one. I'll bring it to you after me. Okay. gonna go for the really hefty one right out of the bat.
Rip it.
I want to know what the hidden dangers are with all of these distance virtual learning companies and their contracts with singular school districts around our state. There's multiple, I think we're up to 5 at this point, and I do know there are more in the nation, so it's probably only a matter of time before they appeal and market themselves to another district. What are the, I don't know, if you want to give me the pros and cons, that's fine, but I think most people are quick to find the things that are great about these programs, but nobody's asking the questions, kind of like you pointed out, Nancy. What comes with this? What are we looking at? And Shelta, you can start.
So first and foremost, I think that the virtual classes, it's already been known, especially out at Bighorn. They have a few students that do their virtual learning, and they did not test well compared to the brick and mortar students. So I think that that is a huge issue. Where's the disconnect? Is it proving that virtual learning is not the best? In-person learning is probably the better for these kids. As far as the ones that Shannon's talking about, if they're paying you money to sign your kid up for them, why? And do you really get to just have the money, or do you have to use it a certain way? And the schools that are being sold these companies, so they get your students' money from the state. So that's why they love this program, because they're like, heck yes, we'll take that ADM every day, all day long, 16,000, 20,000, whatever it is a year. I just want to know, what is the curriculum that is being taught through these virtual classes? And what is the issue if you don't like what's being taught? Like, do you get to pick an alternative text? I'm not sure how those virtual classes are going for those kids. I think that there's a lot of people that say virtual is best for my child. And I say, awesome for you. I'm for individualized education, because I think that's what's needed. This one size fits all clearly is not working. But I think that we need to be a little bit more of the trust but verify in general with all education. I think if the teacher or the company that's doing the virtual stuff, if they don't want you to know what they're teaching, that's a big red flag. And I hope I answered all parts.
I know that the virtual learning thing is a big thing, especially introduced with COVID. Can you remind me the name? It's not Tech Prep. What is the name of Tech Prep? Thank you.
Which
Yes.
is short for entrepreneurship, that's where that comes from.
Yes. I absolutely see some questions that arise as I've looked at this information. I have notes on my phone, but not before me. But I know that students here, if they were to use this certain company, they are now enrolled technically in a school district that is far away. And we talked about this with board representation. If the board is representing the community, your student has now signed up and is technically part of a different district. Is that made clear to the students who choose to do this and be part of this program? And how do you know that that board and the direction that that school is going, it lines up? Or how would you have a voice in talking to that school board? Like right now, if there's something you disagree with, you can go stand before the school board, you can talk to the school board members. If you have a student that's enrolled in a program such as this, that's from 4 hours away is where the actual school district is, I have a hard time where you wouldn't be able to know quite so much is going on in that. So that's one of those parental involvement that I think would be challenging when you do something such as that. I also would like to know why school districts have signed up to take part in this and then maybe use something like this for a year and then did not renew a contract. Those are questions that I have, and they may be hard questions to get to, but I will give you an example. I cannot remember the county that was in, but I went and I pulled up all the board meetings and the agendas in this particular district to see where did it discuss this new virtual learning program that came in, how much was being given to the district based off of each student, how long have they been doing it for. So that's who I am as a person. I'm a question asker, digger of more information, and I don't have a wealth of knowledge in that, but it's certainly something that needs to be looked into.
And I forgot about the extracurricular activities associated. Dang it.
Go ahead.
Oh.
It's not
Yeah.
like that here.
You're done.
I can rebut. The one thing that I think that we forgot to touch on was the issue of activities. So your school district, if you're in the virtual class, is, let's say, in Lusk, right? I know someone who graduated from Lusk that was in a virtual class. And how do you participate in activities if you're in athletics or if you're in band or if you, any of those things? Because Lusk is your school. So then I know the answer to this because my kids do this, and so do homeschool kids. You would sign a form with the Wyoming High School Athletic Association, and you would be umbrellaed under the bigger school, so for Sheridan. But I think that there's issues for some of those things that people don't really think about until they're in it. And then they're like, wait, but what about, and I know that it's a lot of moving parts for virtual schools, but I really think instead of just ripping the Band-Aid and saying, yep, let's go, let's do this, it's money, yay, why don't we think about it and give it some actual thought and do some cost consequence analysis? What's more, I guess, worse for the student, not how much money do we get to put in our coffers. I know that we were sat at a board meeting and they talked about doing virtual and how they had better get on the bus and get that virtual class going because they were missing out.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think they meant missing out on students learning. I think they meant money.
Sharon, did you have a question?
Yeah.
Wait.
Oh, I don't need a mic.
It's for
The recording.
Oh,
It's for quiet, Sharon.
They make me take it too, Sharon. So my question is, I would like to know your feelings and how you would represent parents who have a issue with boys who think they're girls and want to go into the girls' locker room and use the bathroom, etc., and play in girls' athletics when they're biologically boys. How are you going to stand up for our kids who don't really need, that shouldn't be here?
One thing that I would do is, first of all, sit down with someone like that. As a board member, I want to be approachable. So if a parent wants to come to me and talk about something, I want to lend them my ear. And I pride myself on being very quick to listen and slow to speak. And an example in an instant like that, I will say it again, I stand on God's word that He created them male and female for the safety of all of our students. Of the entire student body, we need to have males using a male bathroom, females using a female bathroom, and I don't believe gender is fluid. It is not changing, so biological males should be in male sports, biological females should be in female sports, and that should not be co-mixing and commingling.
I am of the same opinion. I have a swimmer, and the freshman boys can outswim my senior. So to have a male, biological male swimming against females, all the females, why would they even bother? Why would you even attempt to work so hard? I mean, they put in miles and miles and miles every day. Why would you even, I would just quit. And I believe that all students have the right to be whomever they want, even if I don't agree with it, that's their right. But they should have their own bathroom if that's going to be how it goes. They should have, in other school districts around the state, they actually have them use staff bathrooms or the individual, like small locking bathrooms. And if a trans student wants to compete, my thoughts are, if that's how that's gonna go, maybe we should consider making their own category so that they're not taking scholarships away from females. And we all know that biological females have no chance of competing against males. So notice how that's never the topic. No one ever brings that up. It's because these males are dominating these female sports. I don't want some naked biological male walking around the locker room with my 15-year-old. It's just not, I mean, we have separate bathrooms for a reason. And I think common sense needs to come back to what we're doing for the safety of everyone, for the safety of the transgender student, for the safety of all the other students. And as a board member, your job is to represent the majority, and I believe the majority of the community is not for the co-mixing.
Thank you.
You wanna go?
No, it's okay, you can go first.
All right, ladies, it's for both of you. 2 questions to start this off with. The first question is, right now, Sheridan School District 2 has a 7-member board. 9, you're right, I'm thinking of council, never mind, 9-member, you're correct. Do you think it's too large, and if elected, would you do something to shrink it? Question 1. Question number 2, I've heard from a lot of educators of late that they don't believe parents have a right to dictate what happens in the classroom. If elected, do you feel that as board members, that parents should have a right to dictate, obviously within reason, on what goes on in the classroom and what our children are being taught?
So the first question is 9 board members, why? I'm not sure why that is. It's a great question. I think it's because it's a volunteer board, they're not paid. So there's more that are absent than present sometimes. And it's a 5-person quorum, so I'm assuming that's why it is the way it is. I don't know. I think it's excessive, but I think 7 is plenty. Next question was about teachers and telling us that they're the expert, please get out of my classroom. I have an issue with that for the fact that I don't know what you're teaching my child, so it is my right to come in your classroom. And if you are really not wanting me there, I kind of am like, well, why is that? Why can't I see what you're teaching? This is a public school that's paid for by tax dollars. We have the right to examine what is being taught. We have the right to ask for alternative texts if they don't go along with our beliefs or our values. I think that we need to get back to having school be a community place where our values are seen And I think that's a huge concern of a lot of parents right now is, I wanna know what you're teaching so that I know that my values are being represented, and that critical race theory and your gender identity politics are not being taught in the classroom. I think that comes back to the principals and the superintendent and the board members holding strong on their values and keeping teachers accountable to that.
That's a great question about the number of board members. I know most would have a 5-person board, I believe. I've read a little bit, and you can request to increase that to the 9. Based off of the size of Sheridan and looking at the surrounding communities, which do have a 5-person board, I am not opposed to the 9 spots that are there, but I would like to look into it a little bit more and find out when you request that, how is that gauged? Is it based off of the population? Is it based off of, I just don't know. And so I want to look into that. It's a great question. As far as parental involvement, I think teachers right now, they've been under a lot with COVID and what we can see nationwide. I feel like they are under attack. And so I want to encourage a healthy relationship between teachers and parents. And I have been sitting down with teachers and principals and saying, what does that look like? How can we do this and how can we work together? As a parent coming in, you don't want an angry parent or an angry person coming into your line of work accusing you of doing something. I think there's a respectful way to bring in something that has caught our attention, that we have concerns about. Why did you present that? Why was that part of the essay requirement? And here are my concerns with it. Can you explain this better? And if you still can't find common ground, some things may need to go up to the principal level. This absolutely is inappropriate. I'm just making an example. Some things can be worked out right at the teacher-parent level, asking for an alternative assignment, an alternative book. But I think the key here is to get parents included in what's going on. And if that's something that you want to see the curriculum at the beginning of the school year, I would love to see it that the teachers uploaded. Like here's, they talked about open house night where you can come in and look, but it's already been prepared so that there's transparency and something doesn't come in as a complete surprise, a book that's going to be read throughout the classroom, that we're able to look. And if there's issue ahead of time before it gets in the hands of our students, that we can say, hey, instead of my daughter or my son doing this, is there an alternative that we could look at instead of that one? So I think transparency is going to be key there. I think just kind of setting it in motion where here's what we're going to be covering, here's how we're going to do it. That's a healthy thing for both a teacher and for parents. I can see only benefit coming from that.
My question was asked on here, so.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
Perfect, I get to ask a question now.
Yay.
All right, so I am a homeschooler, have been for all my life, do not wish to do anything else. What is your opinion concerning homeschooling, and what will you do to protect our rights if that is in your jurisdiction? I don't know if it is or not. Thank you.
Homeschooling has been around for about debatably 6,000 years. It's what we have done as humankind for a very long time. I think that parents are equipped. If we can teach our children how to tie their shoes, eat their food, we can teach reading, writing, arithmetic. I think it's an incredible thing that parents are capable of doing. For homeschooling and rights, there has been a shift. On public education, if we're being completely honest, in about the mid 1860, 50 is kind of when this public education thing came on the scene. And so it's more of the new idea than homeschooling, because homeschooling has been around for so long. So as a board member, board members write the policy. So for example, for a homeschooler to participate in basketball, that's a policy that's put in place by the board. I would want to encourage that and make sure that we give opportunities for homeschool kids to be able to join band, basketball, drama. If we can do that, I think it's an incredible thing to be able to offer homeschoolers, and that's something that I would encourage, especially as a homeschool kid myself.
Also, you have the opportunity as a homeschooler to do electives. You can do so many credits worth of electives of something that wasn't offered to you at home. I am for individualized education. So whatever that looks like for you and your family, that's what I support. Not everybody can fit in the big box, and not everybody should fit in the big box. If we were all the same, we'd be really boring people. So I wanna do what I can to support homeschoolers. I think that the best way to do that is just to stay out of the way, to be honest. I don't think that the school board should be writing policies that affect homeschoolers if it has no bearing on them. So in Arizona, I noticed that they just passed that the dollars follow the student, and there's strings attached to it, and so that's a big problem. Everybody would love, in a perfect world, we'd all love for the tax dollars to just go wherever the student is, but unfortunately, they're gonna assign some strings to that. So most of the time when it comes from the legislators here to do that for homeschool kids, most homeschool parents say no thank you, just because they've looked into it and they see what all hoops they're gonna have to jump through to get that money. What else can I say about homeschoolers? I think that they should have every opportunity that public school kids do. I actually think that homeschool kids probably have more opportunities because of the flexibility of the schedule. So, good question.
Who's next? Oh.
Thank you. So, with the COVID thing and the masking, of course now we have hindsight 2020. So from lessons learned, if something like that happens again, if you're on the board, are you just gonna blindly follow along and say, oh, we're gonna mask our kids for the next 2 years and follow, let's just say, one individual who's saying this is the only information? Or would you look outside the box and try to contact some of these other doctors and whatnot who were saying that it was bad for the kids? Or are you just gonna go, well, you know, that's what, I guess now it's Dr. Wagner, or are you gonna look outside at what other places are doing and other doctors' information, or instead of just relying on the bureaucrat? I won't use his name.
Thank you for that question. I'm Shelta Rambur. I don't know if you've read my name in the paper. I'm kind of famous in the anti-mask realm. I was against the masks from the time that my daughter got in my car in February or March of 20, visibly shaking, crying. And I said, what's wrong? And she said, I can't see people's faces. And I was like, do you need to get your eyes checked? And then I realized, oh, you're having a panic attack because of the masks, because she was being bullied. And so she didn't know who friend or foe was. And so to go to school every day in fight or flight, because I was told by a school board member, all children can handle the masks. It was a lie. We based our thoughts on groupthink, and I will never do that. I'm not someone that goes along to get along. I've proven that time and time again that I will stand up for what is right for individuals because our liberty makes America what it is. I think we've forgotten. I think we're for the good of the group. That's communism. And I will not participate in that at all. I think that asking questions and pausing and saying, okay, well, if we did this, then what? Instead of you coming to the board as a school bus driver and handing them a medical exemption and then saying, nope, wear the mask or leave. And that's not how medical freedom works. That's not how bodily autonomy works. And to disregard it like they did is why I think we stood so strong. Because we knew that it was wrong. And God said, get up, use your voice because you're loud and obnoxious. I'm loud and obnoxious. And you need to do what is right for not just your kids, but for all the kids. The learning loss. Like, I'm pretty sure that I got up in front of the board many times saying, I don't think you understand the full effects of what you're doing. You are destroying children's learning. How do we, as people, how do we actually learn to speak? It's by looking at people speaking. And for them to say, oh, it's fine. That's not what is wrong with gonna affect them. It's so hard when you stand for your principles and they just ignore you. And their job as a board member is to listen to the voter. You are the people that hold the power. I called the governor, I called the Wyoming Department of Education, I called the Wyoming School Board Association. Hi, do you oversee the school boards? Like, do you have any power over them? Oh, no, ma'am, no. The voters, they have the power. And I said, okay, but is there any recourse at anything at all? Because November is a really long ways away. And these kindergartners could really use somebody in their corner. Oh, no, just vote. So it's time to give the voice to the kids. It's time to vote. It's time to say no more. We're not gonna let you guys do this. That's all I gotta say. Sorry, that was a lot.
It's a hot button.
I will tell you that last year, the day before school started, the board called an emergency meeting and they decided that they were gonna put children in masks again. And I left that meeting. In all transparency, I drove to my daughter's school and I took them out. We had decided that we were not going to do that again. Respectfully, I think that every parent needed to be able to make the health decisions for their children. I absolutely, if something like this came down the pipeline again, we need to have more than just one voice saying what we should or should not do. If you look at Buffalo last year, Buffalo stayed out of masks. I understand that the board said we did what was best for the children. I think that doesn't mean taking the power away from the parents to make their medical decisions. Two very close school districts, Sheridan and Buffalo, two very different decisions, which impacted our children. So I absolutely think that we need to be hearing from multiple levels of the medical community or whatever it is that's come down so that we can be very intentional and specific and calculate the pros and the cons when we make decisions like that. We were at the Patriot Chat last Thursday night, and we were presented with the information that when the school board made the decision to mask, the local hospital here in Sheridan was full. They didn't have any beds left, and they were encouraged to put the mask mandate back into place. A gentleman said the VA hospital had 20 beds available for COVID patients that were never used. And it was noted at that meeting that nobody told the school board that. which I think is interesting because as a good school board, we are asking the questions and directing it to where it needs to go. I think that would have been a very good question. What hospitals in Sheridan can take patients? What is their caseload? If Sheridan Memorial is full and the VA has 20, that paints a different picture of our community.
Hi there. I'm wondering, well, I'll start it like this. Critical race theory has lots of different names. I'm wondering how familiar you are with it and its many names. And what can you do as a school board member to ensure or make sure that it's not entering in our classrooms?
Critical race theory is a hot word or group of words. The way I see it is examining history through the lens of race. I do not think we need to erase history. I do not think that we need to shy away from our country and what we did and slavery. Those are important lessons that we, in the history of our great nation, we need to look at those. I don't think that's a bad thing, but I also think it's very important to show how far we have come. Racism is not the normal. I believe it's the exception, and we have focused so much on the people that would think like that, and we're painting a picture where America is racist, and I don't believe that. There are people in America who are racist, but that doesn't mean that we as a nation are that. I think every child needs to know that they can achieve whatever it is they want to, whether they have a certain skin color, they come from a certain background, it doesn't matter. You can achieve what you want to achieve. There are not levels of starting, one's gonna start up here because of XYZ and one's gonna start down here. Everybody starts from one place. Some of us have specific challenges that we have to overcome to achieve success in our lives. I have it, Shelta's had it, everyone has something that's a barrier. But I think children are all given opportunities to overcome those things. I think we need to be very careful in the school system to name it for what it is, whether it's coming out of the English department, the history department, the art department, the drama department, recognize it and put a stop to it right away.
All of that. And I think that parents need to be aware of the words, because it's not just critical race theory, and they'll tell you, we're not teaching that. Well, no, you're not. It's not a curriculum. It's an ideology. If you are gonna teach it as a religion, then I say it's fair game for Jesus to come back in the classroom. If we're gonna have such an unbalanced scale, let's do something to bring it back. I really don't know if everybody knows that when they say equity or inclusion, those are all words that lead you back to critical race theory. Social emotional learning, it's all connected together. Social emotional learning sounds awesome. Everybody's like, well, that's good. Let's equip these kids to have their emotions regulated and know what they're like, and so that they have a trigger, they can get through it. That's not what that is. I think it's involving the parents back into the schools. If we can get parents to volunteer in schools, it does two things. One, you're trusting but verifying what teachers are teaching, and then you're also helping the teacher. My sister's an educator, and she told me that they just keep adding to their plates. They just get more and more tasks assigned to them, not just teaching students. But why can't we give that to parents? I think people always want to help. And if we give them specific directions of what it is that we need help with, then they're willing to do it. I have found that instead of complaining about situations, if I just go and be the person that solves the issue, it it sets an example for other people, and that's what I want to do on the board. We had this, I know this isn't a CRT question, sorry. We had this thing where a couple parents had said that the crosswalks at junior high are very sketchy and someone's gonna get run over. So one day after school, I went up to the junior high and just did crosswalk duty. It's stuff like that. It's getting involved. I think that parents think that they need permission. I think COVID made us all go out and not come back in, and we need to get parents welcomed back into the school. And as a board member, back to CRT, I think that it's important to voice the no. No, we will not be teaching ideologies in our classrooms. We will get back to the roots of education, because that is what is important. Your students don't need to know your political affiliation, your sexual preference. Nobody needs to know any of that. That's what we need to get back to, is that kind of classic teaching.
I'd like to have more questions or answers now.
Okay. So it was said that there's no oversight in any of the school districts in Sheridan County. That is true. In fact, it's actually for the whole state, which is unfortunate. And I think we can all agree that oversight with certain limits to protect are actually a good thing. However, we have the State Wyoming School Board Association. We have the State Board of Education. We have the National Board of National School Boards, the national level of school board associations. They do have oversight because it's in the teachers' unions, because it seems to me that they're the ones who are dictating really what's going on within school districts. As elected, what would you do to keep that out and solidify public education as what it was really meant to be? Reading, math, science, history, geography, etc.
Before you answer, I'm gonna give a part B to that.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, you think we can remember?
Well, I think it will tie in, and I think it will just flow naturally. I could be wrong, and I'm sorry if I've made this really difficult. A lot of the reasons some of that happens, this was actually spoken of at the chamber forum, and the superintendents of public instruction that were there for that forum, it was pointed out that the legislature, the state legislature, when they do their bill writing and they have their regulations, which yes, the board does policy, not those regulations, right? But they're really writing the rules for what the districts can do with the money. The ADMs come with rules. And yes, those entities that he's referencing aren't a part of that, but they're down there lobbying heavy. And because they're doing it that way, where does that leave you with pushing them out, but the regulations that they've got pushed through legislature is now affecting what you can and cannot do with that ADM money? So are your hands tied or not? How do you resolve that?
That's a lot.
That's a lot.
That's a lot.
It's a domino effect.
It is, and it's so much. And I said on a podcast that I was on that we attack it one bite at a time, because that's all we can do. At the end of the day, we have to know that we're doing the best we can with what we have. So the Wyoming School Board Association is a part of the National School Board Association. They voted to stay in it, even though we are domestic terrorists. That's one thing. Yeah, you back there too. Yeah. I think that the first and foremost thing is to stand strong against stuff like that. That's not our community values. So I would vote to dissolve being a part of that National School Board Association. I would even dissolve being a part of the Wyoming School Board Association if I could. But I think that's something you gotta inch towards. You can't just come at them full barrel. Yes, the legislature sets what you can and cannot do with the money they give you. You have to meet their state statutes. The superintendent of public instruction, I'm not sure clearly what they do. When you call them as a parent and you ask for help, they don't help you. They just tell you, it's local control, local control. Then what is it exactly that you do? You set curriculum. That's what they do. If we're not going to be able to change things as on a school board setting policy, then I think we need to come together as a school board, as one voice, and speak to our legislators. They do these round tables with legislators once a year, maybe twice a year. And I watched it, and it's interesting. It's thank you so much for the buckets of money. And it's never like, hey, how about this as a suggestion? I think that would be more beneficial to everybody to have like a meeting of the minds where we decide like, okay, this statute really is not working. Like, can we please edit these certain words? I know that I have asked our legislators to edit some words on the public health officer. I've asked to strike out some words there. But yeah, it's a big task that you're asking, your question. But it needs to be something that everybody has on their brain. And I think just saying no, like standing true to your values, I think that's really helpful. Because right now, no one's even willing to be brave enough to stand up and put their neck out there. And I have shown the past 2 years that I'm willing to do that. I'm willing to fully take the consequences of doing so. I think having this mission that God's put me on has given me the bravery that I never imagined I could have. And I think that just takes one person to say, no, we're not doing that. And then, it's kind of like how Brian Schrader told the USDA, sorry, I couldn't think of the officials. He just said, no, we're not. Your Title IX definition, we're not following it. We have the money in the bank account. We'll do the free lunches ourselves. And with him and other state superintendents coming together and doing that, the USDA walked it back. They said, okay, we're sorry, it was just a suggestion. And I think if more of us are brave like that, then we can actually make the headway that you're talking about making.
It's a lot of words.
Sorry.
Not just you, the questions too. I think that this needs to be attacked on all fronts. I think we need legislators who are coming together and lobbying to address this at a state level. I think we need this at local level, which is why Shelta and I are doing what we're doing. Because we see, like she talked about with the USDA and the funding of school lunches, if you're not gonna include gender inclusion and all of this stuff, then they're not gonna give us the money. Well, I say, let's find a new way to find the money. Because I don't want to be dependent on someone giving me money with strings attached that we sign up for and say, okay, when it goes against our community values. So I think we need to find ways to, when we're looking and saying, what are we dependent on? What could be held over us that we're not going to receive? And how can we become less dependent on that? What can we look outside resources to fill in the gaps? I believe COVID was just the beginning of the hard decisions that are coming before us. And I think we need to put people in place that are ready to face the challenges and make the hard decisions and stand firm.
You go, girl.
I think that sums it up.
Perfect, and it's actually, am I on? I'm on. It's actually kind of the way that you guys worded that was great. That was actually the last question, because I just looked at the clock, it's 8:01. So, but without knowing it, you kind of gave a good summary of who you are and where you're at and why.
Yes.
So, well done without knowing, so it helps to pray before you do something. So we're gonna end at that. There are some refreshments if anybody wants to have some of those. We'll let them come on down. If you have a quick question, I don't wanna keep anybody later than our 8 o'clock time. But if you had something you wanted to ask that you didn't wanna ask in front of the whole group, or that's something more specific that you just wanna talk to them directly, then you can ask that now. We'll just ask that you keep it short so that everybody can go home, because most of us probably have kids or something, or an animal or something to get to. But thank you, ladies, we very much
Thank you.
appreciate it.